All right, check 1, 2. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Politely Dangerous podcast. This is episode 2. I have a very, very special guest here with me today. I know this guy very well. Known him my whole life, some could say.
Yeah.
And it's also, well, I guess yesterday was your birthday, but happy birthday.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Appreciate you coming down to Columbus and making the drive. So I'll introduce you a little bit, man, and then I always like to let my guests kind of introduce themselves in the way they like to. So this is my dad, Caleb Tuck, from Oberlin, Ohio. So yeah, go ahead. I guess introduce yourself the way you like to be introduced.
You basically just told the people who I was and where I'm from. I also have a podcast. I have on season number 2, and basically at my podcast, we deal with a lot of local people from the area, and we're trying to shine a spotlight on the community. And we've had some doctors on, we've had professional football players on, we've had mayors, we've had people all across the spectrum.
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
it's doing pretty good. We have reached over like 150,000 people so far.
Wow.
So it's doing good. We're trying to keep it going. It's kind of difficult because I live in a small town, and sometimes it's hard to find guests because after a while you run out of interesting people in such a small place.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we love that you do that with your podcast, because that's something we're big on too, is sharing stories of people and, giving them their own spotlight and their own shine. Kind of the everyday person. There's a lot of, heroes that don't get the shine or talked about. So, I feel like both of our podcasts, have that aim, that goal to do that. So, and one thing that we love on this, podcast, this show, is good stories. And honestly, you're probably one of the best storytellers I know, because you have lots and lots of stories.
Yeah, I've over my lifetime, I've come in contact with a lot of interesting people. And Maya Angelou once said, I've never met a black person who wasn't interesting in some shape, form, or fashion. And there's so many people that I grew up in a lot of different places. I grew up in a lot of different households, and most of the people that I've come in contact with have all been great, but they all have some type of a quirk or different kind of quality or something about them that make them a special person. And basically all the people I contact, I just love them to death, but They are interesting people.
So I kind of want to start there. Like you said, you've lived a very interesting life, at least from what you've told me, as I've grown up and just the stories. Can you kind of just start there with, your upbringing and, how old did you turn today?
Oh, 54.
54. So, 54 years, man, that's a blessing to live that long. And things have changed tremendously from, when you were younger to now. Can you kind of just talk about what it was like to grow up, in Elyria?
I grew up in Oberlin.
Or Oberlin.
Yeah, I'm from Oberlin. I'm not from Elyria. I'm from Oberlin.
Okay, well go ahead.
People from Oberlin. This is a special place. So I'm from Oberlin. Since I was born till the day I die. I live in the same house right now that my grandmother owned. My uncle lived there for probably 50 years. Now I'm gonna live there till I die. So. I've lived in Oberlin my whole life, and I'm going to be there till I leave this planet.
Well, Oberlin, for the people that don't know, is a very historical place.
Right. They allowed the first people of color to attend college there, and the first woman was there. So, and then I was talking to people from the Historical Society this Saturday, and they said, that happened there. They had the first person of color and the first woman, but what a lot of people don't know is they had a board, and those people were allowed by only one vote.
Wow.
So when they voted, it was only by one vote. They barely passed it, but they did pass it. So, yeah, Oberlin is a very historical place. There've been a lot of great people that come through there as far as, like, doctors, educators, writers. There's been all kind of people come through Oberlin. If you ever Google it and look it up, you can see there's lots of people that you'll recognize.
Right.
It's too many to name right now, but there's a lot of people you'll recognize on that website.
So for you personally, it's a very, very small town. What was it like growing up there when you did?
Well, in Oberlin, you know everybody, and a lot of people you're related to. Like on my grandmother's side, they're Marshalls, and obviously on my father's side, they were Tucks. So, but along that way, like down the street from me, my cousins still live there, and they still live in the same house that their grandfather lived in. And then they own from Main Street all the way back to Professor Street, and they still own it to this day. They still own all that property. So I have a cousin on Main Street down the street, and right behind her, I have two more cousins who own property on Professor Street. If you're not from Overland, you ain't gonna know, but it's like a block.
Right.
They own almost a block. And then if you go around the corner from them, their dad lives there, a whole lot of land, and all of us own a lot of land. So it's great to live there. I grew up with the same friends I had from kindergarten, I still have today.
So with it being a small town, obviously we have a lot of things going on today in the world with, racism and sexism and things like that. Being a small town, what was it like for you growing up in there? Did you face any of those challenges?
No, Oberlin's different, man. Oberlin is like, first of all, it's very liberal. It's the most liberal town in the county. It's probably one of the most liberal towns in the state.
If not the nation, honestly.
Yeah, because they have LGBTQ dorms, they have trans dorms, they have all that at the college. And the college is separate from the town. But growing up in Oberlin, you never experienced like racism. Everybody got along in Oberlin. Everybody was cool with each other. Now, behind the scenes, their mom and dad might have said something different.
Right.
But the way they presented themselves, they were always nice people. Everybody in the whole town was you knew everybody. If I go into Walmart right now, Drug Mart, what's up, Tuck? How you doing? Hey, how you doing, Kayla? How you so you go down. If I walk down the street, at least 10 people that pass me gonna wave and know who I am.
Got you. Now you grew up in Oberlin, but you didn't necessarily stay there.
No.
Can you kind of just talk about your upbringing and just like the difficulties, because granddad kind of had you kind of in different schools, things like that?
No, that was my mom. 85, 86, we moved to Colorado. My mom got remarried. We moved to Colorado. We lived there for about a year. I went to school at Gateway High School, and it was the home of the Olympians. And we was only there for a year. My mother said she didn't like it there. She got divorced. We moved back. I lived in Lorain for a while with my dad. And my dad, he had a girlfriend at the time. And one day I came home from school, and she was like, "Your dad, he's gone." I'm like, "What do you mean he gone?" She's like, "Your dad, he left. But this is his house, so you can stay here."
That's crazy.
That is crazy. So I stayed with
and
her.
How old were you?
17, 18. So I stayed. It was my last year of school. Once I came back from Colorado, I was a senior. So she's like, "You can stay here." And then she left, and I was there by myself for a little while. And then my mom said, "You can't stay here." So I moved in with my mom in Elyria and stayed there for a month or two. And I didn't like living in Elyria because my mom she was living with her fiance at the time, let's say. And the house was small, and I didn't want to be there.
Yeah, you were used to being at granddad's house.
Yeah, well, yeah. And then when I found him, because remember he left, he was living in an apartment with another woman. So when I got there, he said, "Well, listen, man, this is a 1-bedroom apartment." And the lady that he moved in with, she had 2 girls. So it was already 4 people living in the 1-bedroom. Right. And they had a dog.
Good Lord.
And they said, "You can stay here, but we don't know where you're going to stay."
Yeah.
So I ended up sleeping on the floor. My senior year, I ended up sleeping on the floor under like a table. And they slept on a pull-out couch.
Wow.
And if you ever, I don't know if they ever watched the podcast, but it was Antoinette and Kim. That was the 2 daughters' name. And my stepmother's name was Alice. And we all lived in there for maybe about 3-4 months. And after I graduated, I moved out. And the day I graduated, I moved in with David Payne.
Wow. David
Payne and his mother and father, Butch and Christine Payne, they were some of the nicest people you ever want to meet. And they said, "Listen, you can stay here as long as you work. As long as you got a job, you can stay here." And I worked at the college, like washing dishes and stuff like that. And they took me in like I was family.
It's funny that you kind of had that road in your life, because I'm sure you remember when my mom kicked me out my senior year, I also had to go live with my best friend and his parents.
Yeah.
And it was kind of the same thing. Like, hey man, you can stay here, but you can't just lay around all day.
As long as you got a job. Yeah.
So yeah,
I remember me and Granny coming to visit you, and like they said, no, he's fine. They were nice people too.
Oh, greatest people.
They said he's fine. He don't bother us. I do remember that. Yeah, that's crazy.
So it's funny we both kind of had that same course. Now, I mean, mentally, you're 17, 18 years old. Your dad is, grandpa's doing whatever, and we'll kind of dive into his life a little bit more in a little bit. But where were you at mentally? Was it something you're like, well, this is just kind of how it is, or were you kind of like at 17, 18, like this is nuts?
No, you know what's crazy to me, and it's weird because I never thought of it like that way. But back then, mental illness was not considered a big thing.
Right.
It was just you just dealt with what you had.
Yeah.
And I always thought that there's people that got it way worse than me. So I never thought of myself as in a bad situation. I was like, well, I got clothes, I got somewhere to stay, I got something to eat. And I never felt like, oh man, this is terrible, I ain't gonna make it. I've never been a depressed person. Mm-hmm. And back then, like I said, mental health was not a big deal. So you didn't think about like, woe is me, or this is so bad. I just went about life. It was just life. That's all it was.
Yeah. So speaking on that, mental health, things like that, do you feel that with all the resources and things now that's something you wish you would have had back in the day? Or was it kind of just like, nah, that's just how we grew up?
I can't put myself in today's, at that age, I couldn't put myself now how that was back then. Because I just can't do it mentally. I don't know how that would work. But I'm sure I did have a teacher, and she would ask me different. Her name was Miss Jackson, and that was at Admiral King. And she said, so where do you live at? And I told her, I said, I live over there by myself. She's like, you live by yourself? I said, yeah. And then she would go, well, did you eat this morning? And I go, no, I didn't eat. And she would bring me like a breakfast sandwich or something. She's a real nice lady. And I remember her to this day.
Wow.
But that was back a long time ago. Like I said, back then, nobody cared about, you didn't go see no psychiatrist, psychologist. The best thing they told you back then was you need to go to church and seek Jesus. That's all you. That's what. And people still subscribe to that to this day.
Yeah, true.
But you can do both. You can believe in Jesus and see a therapist.
Yeah, and we just talked about that on the last podcast. So I kind of want to, shift gears here and keep talking about your upbringing a little bit, because you really did have a very interesting life growing up. That I'm not sure if all your friends know or even the family knows. So I don't know when Grandpa converted. Now, was he always?
Oh, that was years ago.
Was he always a Muslim? Or
that was years. Yeah, that was years ago. They all. You'd have to ask Granny about that. But they all became that back in the '60s before I was born. Mm-hmm. And then
so he was Muslim even when you were growing up.
Now
okay.
that's a whole nother story. But they were that in the '60s because he would go to the mosque way back, and he was part of the Fruit of Islam, which was a security force for Elijah Muhammad. And sometimes he would actually go up there and guard Elijah Muhammad during speeches in
Grandpa
Chicago.
did.
Yeah, in
wow,
Chicago.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they remember, like Aunt Denise, you remember being in the same restaurant like Malcolm X.
Yeah,
and
Muhammad Ali.
And yeah, they sat at a table right next to Ali in a mosque eating dinner. Because I remember Granny was like, who's ordering all this food? And when he sat down, it was Muhammad Ali sitting right next to him.
Crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. It's weird because at the time, you might not think of like from a historical perspective, like I'm sitting here with Ali or Malcolm X.
Right.
They was in the same mosque, because you got to remember it wasn't nationwide. Most of the stuff they did was in Chicago.
Yep. Okay.
Chicago, New York, and Boston. And my dad would go, he said he took me, but I was so little, I don't really remember it.
So that was my next question. Did he ever try to impose, the religion onto you? Because obviously, I mean, you have your beliefs and things like that. But, my name, for a lot of people that don't know, is actually Malik. And that's, from...
that's from... I got that name from Malcolm X. Because once he went to Mecca, he converted his name to El Hajj Malik El Shabazz. Mm-hmm. And I always liked the name Malik. So that's where we got that from. But when I was coming up, by the time I was born, they were coming out of it. They were about...
Oh, okay.
They
so it
weren't
wasn't
in
as
it
strong.
as much. Okay. Yeah, because I think my older brother and sister they dealt with the brunt of that religion. And by the time I got there, like we started celebrating Christmases and doing more stuff that was more, I guess, worldly, as you want to say. But yeah, by the time I never really, except for when I was really small, which I don't remember. But when I was coming up, they didn't go. They would listen to it on the radio, and by 1975, Elijah Muhammad had passed. As a matter of fact, he died on the same day that my sister Aisha was born.
Wow.
February 25th, 1975.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Okay. Wow. So yeah. So I was gonna say, because growing up, I didn't feel like, Grandpa would always ask me if I wanted to go to the mosque and stuff like that, and I never went. But I never knew if he tried to impose it on you guys.
No,
but
well, by the time I was older, they had got divorced and he had left, and it was a whole different thing by the time I was older. Because once Elijah Muhammad died, the religion pretty much died out too, and they also found out a lot of stuff that he was doing that people like, well, this is kind of a cult. It's not really religion.
Yeah.
And once the leader dies, then the religion dies. When it's a cult, when the leader dies, the religion's going to suffer too. And it wasn't until a couple years later, Farrakhan took over, but it was never the same because they owned restaurants and bakeries and dry cleaners, and it never got back to that level as it was in the 60s and early 70s.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's fast forward a little bit. So on the podcast, obviously, we like to have people on that are active in the community. Like you said earlier, your podcast likes to shine light on, local people, things like that. But even before your podcast, you host your own festival called the Tucky Bear Festival.
Yeah.
Which, I'd love for you to kind of explain more of what that is and like what prompted you to start that.
Listen, everything I do, it comes from some weird organic place. So it was in the fall, and in the neighborhoods, but the cities around us, they all have festivals. Elyria has the Apple Festival. Vermilion has a fish festival. North Ridgeville has a corn festival. And I said, hey, man, how come we don't have a festival? And, of course, my friend Wade said, well, why don't you put one together since you're always talking about it? I'm like, well, yeah, all right, then we'll have a festival then. We'll call it Tucky Bear Fest. He goes, all right, whatever. So I decided, we had the first year, I think we had like a bouncy house.
Yep.
We had DJs. We had food. And I paid for it out of pocket. So it got kind of expensive. But I did it for like 7 years. But 7 is the number of completion. And after 7 years, I'm like, you know what? I've done it, and I could see it got big, real big, and then it started just to dwindle just a little bit. I'm like, we had a lot of fun. We had cornhole tournaments, and sometimes it would rain. We'd have it in the rain, but everybody had a great time, and the family got together, and it's all about community. You just want to bring your community and family together wherever you live at. And I know, like if you live in a city like Columbus, it's almost impossible because it's a city. I'm sure there's maybe subdivisions that might be a little bit closer, but in a small town, man, I could call my friend Dave up. He'll barbecue. I'll call Henry. He'll bring some liquor. I'll have Granny bring this. I have BB fried fish. So everybody pitches in. It's not just me. It was never just me. Everybody pitched in and did something. Yeah. But usually I would buy the food, have you come down and DJ. And it was good to see like Uncle Sonny and people like that come up and visit you and Mimi. And it got, like I said, when I had the cornhole tournament one year, it got really big. But it's just a lot. And it's people help you, but without one person putting it all together, it's difficult. And after a while, I'm getting older. So I'm like, I don't want to keep doing it. And plus, those guys that were at the festival, they come to my house every Friday and play cornhole anyway. And they still barbecue and do the same thing they was doing at the festival. They're just there every Friday instead.
So, I mean, obviously it takes a certain person to entertain and to host and to want people to be in their home and things like that. Where do you think you got those qualities at? Because
that's easy. Granny.
Yeah.
Granny is, and it's hard because as I've gotten older and Granny's obviously gotten older, you appreciate her so much more and what she's done for everybody. But Granny would have people come over and feed them and buy them gifts. Granny has helped everybody. I mean, in the family, everybody, me, Nikki, Maud, Isha. If we didn't have money for Christmas, Granny got you. If you don't have money for school, you know that because she got you.
Very true.
If you don't have a car, she would have an extra car some kind of way. She got a car for you. So no matter what you needed, now when you do this, you gonna hear it. So, but she gonna take care of you no matter what it is. Granny is one of the sweetest people you ever meet. Now, she can be harsh, but that's just part of her upbringing. That's the way she was brought up. So people from that generation, they're a lot harder than people now.
Yeah.
But they gonna give you what you want, but you just gonna have to hear about it.
Yeah. So I kind of want to, go off that, what you just said, things being hard, being difficult, obviously for Granny growing up, things were difficult. You kind of bounced around and now you're celebrating 54 years of life. What would you say is one of the most difficult things you've had to learn or that you faced in your time here on Earth?
Oh, that's easy. Divorce is the hardest thing I ever went through.
Yeah.
Because you build up a relationship and you build up, we had a house and I had a car and I had kids that could come over whenever. And then it's like in the blink of an eye, everything changes and everything's gone. And it was just like, your younger brother, I hung out with him all the time. He's autistic. Mm-hmm. Now, he's really smart and he's in tune with everything. He's, but early on, he had trouble with speech and he had trouble with handwriting and stuff like that, this normal stuff. But it was hard leaving him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because once they left, they actually moved out of the country and moved to Germany.
Yeah.
It was that was hard. Your mom, she kicked me out a couple of times. So, but I always knew, even though she had kicked me out, I knew that I could come see you guys. That wasn't a problem. So, but yeah, I've been kicked out a lot of places.
Yeah, I'm starting to see a
pattern.
Yeah, a pattern here. So yeah, that is definitely a tough thing to go through, man. Just divorce, especially when you have kids. And then you mentioned, obviously I have a brother who's autistic. That's your son. What are like the challenges you dealt with? Because I guess for me as a brother, it's kind of like, that's just my brother. So like, it is what it is. But obviously, I'm not a parent. I hope to be one day. What kind of just explain or, go through, what was it like when you kind of maybe just first heard that, how have you dealt with it now? Just kind of the challenges with that too.
Well, when you're a kid, when a child is born, you don't know that they're autistic.
Right.
They're a baby. But I remember he didn't open his eyes for a long period of time.
When he was first born.
When he was first born, I thought that was kind of strange. And as a parent, you kind of get a feeling when your kids are in trouble or something's different or something's missing, you kind of can feel it. And then you can't feel it with other people because they're not your children. But with your own child, you can feel it. And he was in preschool. And when he was in preschool, all the kids would be playing in one area and he'd be off by himself. And he'll be lining up trains. He loved trains as a kid. And he always played with Thomas the Tank Engine. So he loved trains. And one time I went to the school and his teacher was Mrs. Hicks. And Mrs. Hicks, she's a sweet lady. And I grew up on Park Street next to Miss Hicks. And I asked her, Miss Hicks, do you think he has autism? She's like, I'm not sure, but something's wrong. So she said she gave me like a card to a lady in the area to take him to the school. And I got him tested, and I figured it out then that he was autistic. But it's hard, but as he's gotten older, he's super smart, super intelligent. And he can figure out things that I'm like, how did you figure that out? He's like, I don't know, I just know it. But he's going to school now, he's in college, and he said he's doing good. Kids, when they get to college, they have a tendency to lie.
They love to lie, kids, man.
Yeah, I had one kid, he had a bunch of vodka bottles in his dorm room, and he said, oh yeah, I'm just collecting them. I'm like, man, come on, bro.
Man.
Come on, man.
Who that was.
Yeah, you killing me, dude. You're killing me. So
obviously, having a son who is autistic that's a challenge in itself, but you've obviously had two kids before that with me and my sister. Talk about just what are some of the challenges you felt? Because how old were you when you had me? Well, when my mom had me.
Let me see. I'm 54. How old are you? 30, so I was 24.
Man, I couldn't even imagine having a kid at 24 right now. What was that like to have a kid at 24 in that time, in that era?
at that time, man, when stuff is happening, you never think about it. Now, as I gotten older, I probably think about it more. But having a kid is like, man, I don't know. Having a kid, I don't have a good job. I have this, I have that. And we lived over there because it was, at first we stayed with Mary for a little while.
Which is my grandmother.
Your grandmother on your mother's side, who I love dearly. And then we lived on, I think it was Friendship. Was that what street we lived on? It was right around from Tebbett's. Remember Tebbett's little store? Yeah. So we, growing up there, man, it's just a blessing to have a kid. And early on, you the oldest, so the first one is like, what did we do? You know what I'm saying? Well, we got this kid, but you were always like a real friendly kid, and like you believed in like stuff that other people didn't believe, like Santa Claus. And I remember one time you was over at Granny's, like, Granny, I seen the Easter Bunny.
Oh boy.
And Granny's like, that boy crazy.
He's gonna have some problems.
I said, yeah, but Granny always told me, she said, there's just something about him that's special. She said he's favored for some reason. And she probably, if you ask that to this day, she still believes that. She said there's just something about him. He's just a special kid. And I said, I think the boy a little slow, Granny.
Oh, God.
I said, he all right.
Still might be.
So that's, but yeah, that's throughout your whole life. And then Mimi come along 2 years later. And I remember when she was brought home, your grandfather Clarence, he was holding her, and he said, "This baby don't care about nothing but herself. She just loved me, and she just loved Sam. You just love me and me." And I can remember that clear as day. He said, "I'm gonna just call her Mimi," and it just stuck from then on. It never went away. It's like to this day, Mimi will tell you if you say her name, it surprised her. Like, who's calling me by my name? Because nobody uses they call me Mimi. But from like the first day she came home, she was Mimi after Clarence gave her that name. And that's where she got it from, was Clarence.
Yeah. I feel like, obviously everyone has different parenting styles, but, growing up, you were always pretty laid back, chill. So, I kind of feel like when I ask you if there's any challenges, you were kind of just more like letting things happen and just going with the flow. They're going to happen
anyway, man. What's going to happen is normally going to happen. I just was blessed with good children. All three of y'all are great people. You're great human beings. But I know great people that raise kids that were bad, and vice versa. I know bad parents that have excellent children. So you just every child. I heard a minister say that every child does not belong to you. They just come through you. Your children are from God, and everybody comes with their own mosaic and their own special qualities, and you can love them and try to mold them, but they're going to be who they're going to be, no matter what. But you try to bring them up right and give them guidelines and principles. And Granny took you guys to church, and that was great. So it seemed like morally you guys are all pretty much centered, and your values are pretty decent. You're all pretty decent. You're all decent people. And that's all you can wish for as a parent.
I'm actually shocked when I asked you, the hardest thing you've been through, because I thought you were going to say something else.
What was you
I thought it was going to be about Grandpa when he passed away.
That was
because I feel like that was a difficult situation.
It was difficult, but I think the thing about my dad passing away is because I was in charge of everything. Like when he died, he left me as the power of attorney, so I had to take care of the funeral and getting all the stuff together for the funeral. And when you keep yourself...
even before that, though, because how he passed away is...
he died in front of my house.
In the truck.
He was coming to... I can see where you're going. You want to hear the story. So, your cousin Ari was getting an award in college. And he said, we should go support Ari. And I said, okay, we'll do that. So we were getting ready, and I was getting dressed. And you two were going. You and Mimi were going with me, and you were over Granny's house.
Actually, we were at Aunt Isha's, but whatever.
No, you was over. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why you was over Granny's. You was with Granny because when I went to the truck, I seen him outside in the truck, and I flashed the lights for him to come in. I said, I'm going to start some coffee because he liked to drink coffee.
Love coffee.
So I'm like, well, what's up with dude? So I had my shirt on and my pants, and I went outside, and he was just kind of like he was asleep. And I said, what's up, old man? And he just kind of slumped over. Oh my God! So
because he always fell asleep.
He did.
Especially, yeah.
But at
movies.
that point, I knew he wasn't asleep. So back then, we didn't have cell phones. I didn't have a cell phone. So I had to run inside and call 911. And Lisa, was my wife at the time, she was like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "I don't know, but my dad, I think he had a heart attack." So she ran out and she was giving him CPR, and we waited for the ambulance to come. So the ambulance is on its way, and she's out there giving him CPR. And Granny calls me. She's like, she's going to fuss at me. "I got these kids ready, and you ain't even on time. They over here." I said, Granny. I said, "I think Dad has passed away." "What? What do you mean?" I was like, she said, "I'll be there in a minute." That's how I know you was with Granny, because we went over issues. We go to Issues, and Granny's wild. So we get to Issues, and she's like, Isha.
Yep.
And she's ringing the doorbell, and then she throws rocks at the window. And Isha lifts up the window, and is like, "What's wrong?" "Your dad is dead."
Jeez.
So that is not the way she's like, What are you talking about?" She's like, "Come down here. We got to get to the hospital." So we get to the hospital, and we're waiting outside. And I remember we're all sitting there, and my Uncle Boogie was with us. And he said, "I never thought my brother would go before me." And it was hard, but that was tough too. And now that might be something that psychologically I just bury and don't even think about it that often, because it's hard to think about.
Yeah, I said that because for me, like when my grandma passed away, my mom's side, it still even sticks with me until this day. And I don't know why. There's times where I'll think about it. I'm like, man, I'm still sad about it. Because I can vividly remember being on the bus, and I'm pretty sure. It's funny because I heard a study that said as you get older, your memory fades and like you kind of make up stories. So, but I can vividly remember being on the bus. I think it was like the end of the year, and my Uncle Mike calls me, and he says, "Your grandma's got cancer." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, your grandma's got cancer." And these girls I knew, they were messing with me and joking around. And I'm even when I was in high school, I was a very extroverted guy. I'm always kidding around, joking on the bus, things like that. And I just start crying. They were like, "Oh, like,
yeah, this is serious.
Something's going on with this guy." And I was like, "Yeah, I found out my grandma has cancer." And it's fun. It's so funny how some stories stick with you. So when she got cancer, she stayed with my mom because my mom, she does the nursing and all that. So we moved her in with us. And the crazy thing, and we just had someone on the show that dealt with breast cancer. She had stage 4 immediately.
Right.
And so to see her one day, how she was, to the next day to where she couldn't even speak to me, was just like, as a kid, was just like, whoa.
It happened super fast.
So fast. And so, they always had ice, and they'd put it in a towel, and like they'd have to, put it on her lips and things like that. And I remember I called her one day at the hospital, and like this was like non-provoked or anything. I was like, "I just want to talk to my grandma," and she couldn't even talk to me for more than a minute. Yeah. And I was like, "This is serious." And so, we had a bed for her in my mom's house. So she stayed with us. I'd see her. I'd go to school. Bye, Granny. Come home. And she was just laying there. I didn't get to talk to her or anything because she couldn't. And then I stayed at my friend Brendan's one night just because we had so many people in and out of our house. And my mom was like, "Go stay with them, and we'll see you tomorrow." And the craziest thing, man, we're riding back to my house, and just something in my spirit just didn't sit right. I'm looking out the window, and I'm just like, something's off. And as a kid, I'm like, man, something's
wrong.
Just off. And I could just feel it. And so the whole ride there, I'm just like, man, I don't know what it is. And I'll never forget, we pull up to the house. The door's open. I open the door, and all my cousins and family are there.
Yeah.
And everybody just stops, looks at me, and is dead silent.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So it's just, that was something for me that, stuck with me for a long time. So,
right.
And that was my grandma.
And that's the person that gave you your name, Leak.
Yep. A lot of people don't know that.
Because you didn't like that.
Yeah, she used to call me Leaky Love.
Yeah, I don't like that name, Dad. Like, well, that's what she gonna call you.
So my question then is, obviously you had, I don't want to say a rough upbringing. I would say a different one.
It's different. I mean, some people would like. There was a friend of mine, David Watson, who just passed away, and one day he said we were sitting at the gym. It was me, him, and Kurt Russell, and Kurt Russell, and he asked me some questions like, Chuck, what you been up to? I was like, man, well, I went through a divorce. I lost my job. And he's like, have you ever seen a therapist? I'm like, what? He's like, a therapist, man. He's like, dude, you went through like 2 traumatic events and you ain't never talked to nobody
This is
about
recently?
it? Well, that was back,
then. Okay.
when I got divorced. That was like
Oh, wow. So
2010.
even back then.
Yeah, I was like, no, I never thought about that. He's like, maybe you should. I never thought about it like that. So
Yeah.
it's just different.
So with that being said, you sit here today, you've been through a divorce, the thing with grandpa, how you lost him, growing up with him and granny, we won't get too deep into that, but it wasn't always easy. You moved around, and you still, you sit here as a pretty positive, happy person. Just, I guess really just what has allowed you to kind of stay in that mentality and to not, have your past really, take that energy and just, because you could be super negative and woe is me. What do you think has allowed you to, kind of stay happy?
It's something that you have to be introspective about, especially when it comes to negativity, because sometimes I talk to you and you'll tell me something like, man, and I'll say, that ain't going to happen. And you're like, why you always doubt me, bro? And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to stop doing that because you prove me wrong every time I say you can't do something. But the key for me was why I never get sad, because I have a lot of good friends, like my friend David, Henry, Molly, Wade, but they all silly. So you can't never be sad because they're gonna make you. They're gonna make you laugh or make you smile or something because they just are good people and they're great people. They're extremely great people to be around all the time.
Yeah,
I mean, there have been times I go to Molly or Molly will come to me. Henry jokes around all the time, but when he is serious, he is a very he has a lot of wisdom.
Yeah,
a lot. And David Payne too. They all have a lot of wisdom and they all smart and they've been through stuff I ain't been through, and they help me and sometimes I help them. But you have to have it's good to have friends, especially the ones I got, because they're like gold to me.
Yeah, you do have, man, you got some good friends because, I've met them and, they treat me like.
Yeah, that's Oberlin though. Oberlin is like one big family. And it's good in a way, but in a way it kind of sucks you in and makes you real comfortable. And sometimes you need to be uncomfortable in order to do different stuff. But Oberlin is one of the greatest communities you could ever live in because everybody looks out for you.
Yeah,
everybody looks
I agree.
out for you.
It's always been a great place, even when I would come visit,
Right. Yeah, because Elijah come down and he's always been gone. And one day he called me when I was at work. He's like, Dad, there's people coming up in the driveway. And they're just going in the backyard. I'm like, they know who you are, believe it or not, and they're fine. Don't worry about it.
You don't see a lot of that anymore today, man.
And my house is always open.
Whoa.
So there's times where I'll come home and they'll be there in the house. They done went in the house and they done started the barbecue grill, went in the house, got liquor out the cabinet, but they bring liquor and they been back there and I'm like, what y'all doing, man? Like, man, this is like our house too.
Man, if only the world could be like that in totality.
Man, that'd be great.
It would be great. So I feel like we've talked a lot about the politely part. Now there's the other half, dangerous, and kind of the dangerous part. What we say is, there's a negative connotation when you say the word dangerous. But what we try to, convey on here is that you can be a dangerous person without, causing havoc or anything,
right,
or being disrespectful. What do you think are some qualities about yourself that make you a dangerous person? I guess just what keeps you going? What keeps you sharp?
Man, ain't nothing dangerous about me. there ain't no sharp edges.
Not dangerous.
Man, I'm one of the most squarest people I know. Man, I don't hardly do nothing. The crazy part is, I hear other people's stories, and I'm like, you really did that? Like, yeah. I'm like, that. Like, I got a friend, man, I ain't gonna mention no names, but he said, yeah, man, I used to be a stripper. This is a dude.
Oh, goodness.
I'm like, dude, you was a stripper for real? He goes, yeah, man, I was about there with my little G-string on. So, to me, that's crazy.
Good
that's
Lord.
crazy. So, I don't know people that did all kind of crazy stuff, man, but I was just kind of like, just wanted to have a decent job, have a decent life, and be around my friends and family. I don't really, the crazy part is I've seen people who've lived dangerous lives.
Well, I don't mean, so when I say dangerous, I don't mean so much like I said, the word danger. I really mean like when we think of people on this podcast that are dangerous, they're people that have been through a lot of stuff, but there's something about them that's kept them going, that they've used to just kind of stay, stay focused.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like, for example, when I was on the podcast the other day, my brother does a podcast with me, and if you can see the shirt, it's Tuck and Tuck.
Shout out to Tuck and Tuck.
So he said, he was telling the producer, Matt, he said, he's been close to death like 3 times. And I said, yeah. And then Matt said, for real? What are you talking about? I said, when I was 2 years old, I swallowed a bunch of pills my mom had in her purse. Now, I'm 2, so I don't know what they're for.
I don't even think I knew this.
Right. So we were going to the zoo, the Toledo Zoo, and they said you was in the back passing out, and my dad and my brother and sister was like, let's let him sleep it off. He'll be fine. We want to go to the zoo. So my mother, she's like, no, he's something wrong. We got to get him to the doctor. So they drove back to Oberlin, and the doctor who was my doctor, and I'm trying to get him on my podcast now, his name was Dr. Mason. He's a fantastic person, and he saved me,
Wow.
And he saved my life that time. The second time, I lived in Colorado, and I was laying sod for a church. It was a Good Shepherd Baptist Church. And I was outside laying sod, and I went to the church, and the church said, when you're done laying this sod, come in and eat. We got pizza for everybody. Mm-hmm. So I went in, I was eating pizza. Back then, they put MSG in a lot of stuff to keep it fresh or looking fresh. And unbeknownst to me, I had MSG-induced asthma, which made me go into anaphylactic shock.
Wow.
So I always have an inhaler with me, even to this day. So I was in the bathroom. I just felt like I couldn't breathe. So I'm taking an inhaler. Nothing happens. I come outside and just fall out. My lungs collapsed. Luckily, there was 2 pastors there that gave me CPR, and they kept me going until the ambulance came. I ended up in the National Jewish Center, which is a large place for people with asthma. And I remember being on a vent. And I remember being transported. When you're on a vent and transport, it's just a bag that they squeeze to keep air in your lungs. Wow. So I'm alert, but I can't talk because there's obviously a tube in my throat. Mm-hmm. So I keep looking at this man squeezing his bag, and then he's talking, and then he forgets sometimes, and I'm like, Focus, so squeeze the bag, bro. Come on, man, what you doing? And then the last time was just a couple years ago. I have a lot of allergies. I'm allergic to fish.
Oh, I remember this day.
I was with my friend Henry, and he had cooked the whole thing of chicken and fish, and he had put barbecue sauce on the fish. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking it's chicken. So I eat a piece. He's like, "What are you doing, bro? That ain't no chicken. That's fish." I'm like, "Man, I'll probably be okay." So I'm sitting there watching the football game. I said, "Dude, I'm having trouble breathing. You got any Benadryl?" He said, "Yeah, I think I got some in the medicine cabinet. I'll be right back." So I get up and start walking to the truck. I get to the truck. I'm like, "Man, I can't breathe at all." I'm like, "Dude, call the ambulance."
Jeez.
He's like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah, call the ambulance." So I get to the, I don't even remember the ambulance ride. From being in, once they got there, I don't remember anything after that. So my friend Henry said, "Man, you had turned blue because you wasn't getting no air."
Wow.
He said, "I told him, you got to get him to the hospital. Quit screwing around." So I wake up in Mercy Hospital. This is no lie. I come out, I wake up, and I look over to my left, and there's this nurse. And she is one of the most beautiful nurses I've ever seen in my life. And I said, "Oh, my God, I made it."
Oh, my God.
I made it to heaven. For real, this was going through my mind at the time, like, I made it. Oh, man, I'm so blessed I made it. Then Henry, "Hey, buddy, what's up?" I'm like, "What are you doing here, man?" I was like, so I did like this. And they said, "Oh, he wants something to write on." I go, "Where am I?" And they said, "You're in Lorraine Mercy Hospital." I'm like, "What happened?" And they told me what happened. And that was the third time I got it. So with all that being said, I think what you're getting at is there's a reason why God has left me here. And I'm still working on that. I try to get better every day, but I know there's a reason for me to be here because he's giving me chance after chance after chance. Yeah. So there's got to be, I mean, you guys are grown. I mean, you always, I talk to you guys as much as I can, but everybody still, it's good to have your dad around, but there has to be a reason for me to be here. And I might not even know what it is yet.
Yeah.
But there's a reason for me to be here.
That's the crazy thing about life, man. You could get to 70 and not even live your purpose until then. You know,
Right.
Which is a great way to look at it. And you know, that last story is nuts, man. Because that's another day I vividly remember. I was in Cleveland. I was at a concert with two friends of mine, and you know, I'm drinking and stuff, so I'm a little bit under the influence. And I just get a call from Aunt Isha, your sister, and they're like, "Yeah, we had to take your dad to the hospital. He had a really bad reaction." I'm like, "Oh yeah, he eat some fish?" They're like, "Yeah, but the way she made it sound was like, I'll keep you updated." I was like, "Oh
hey.
boy."
Yeah, and the crazy part is when I finally get all the tubes out and Granny's there, I'm like, "Granny, you got my wallet?" "Yeah, I got it."
Of course.
I said, if I'd have died, what was you gonna do with my money? I'll go to the casino. What you think? I'm
That's
like,
right.
man, give me my wallet.
Ching ching.
Give me my wallet. So, but yeah, it was weird going through that. It was tough. That, like I said, the first 2 times I was so young, it was like, oh, this is just something that happened. But as you get older, you realize it's such a blessing to still be here.
Yeah. Do you think it's, you know, shifted your thinking, your mind going through those life-changing situations?
It has a lot, because I never got in trouble anyway. I said, I'm a pretty square dude. But as you get older, you realize, you know, every day is important and is valuable. And I remember sitting in church one time, and the pastor said, everybody is on borrowed time. He said, nobody is given tomorrow. Nobody. He said, you can go anytime. So life is so, as I get older, life is so precious that you don't even realize that, you know, just waking up, breathing, walking, talking. I mean, and I work in a nursing home, and I see people like leave every day, all the time.
Yep.
And sometimes I see, and I try to be nice as I possibly can to the people. And sometimes when they pass away, you feel that.
Yeah.
And like going through COVID, man, the facility I work in, we lost like 30 people.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that.
And it was like the whole side of the building was gone. So that was hard, but I think as long as you are like treat people like you want to be treated and are kind, I think God rewards that. You might not think so, but you just have to count everything you go through as a blessing. Just waking up, just being able to eat or have somewhere to live. So you gotta remember, man, I don't make a lot of money, but I still probably live better than 85% of the population in the world.
I would agree.
Just by having
I'm gonna turn that off. Go ahead.
Just by having somewhere to live and a car to drive and food to eat.
Yeah, man, I think, you know, I definitely am grateful, you know, to have parents kind of instill that in me, even if it wasn't always directly. You know, you and my mom have always been pretty positive people, you know, and I think it shows. So, but man, I feel like, you know, there's so many stories and, you know, things that I've seen, you know, things like that. But is there any final story or anything that you'd want to share or, you know, that we didn't cover?
Yeah. The most important thing I want to know is how much am I getting paid to do this podcast?
All right, everybody. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Politely Dangerous Podcast.
Man, how much money am I getting paid to be on here? Because I done came all the way down. You know, I had to drive that truck. That truck ain't for long drive. That's for short distance, man. You don't put the Blue Mule through all that.
How about we go get some steak and we call it even?
No, man, I don't want no steak. I need some cash, bro. I'm a little short this week. You got what I mean?
All right.
It don't have to be a big, you know, a large amount. Just a couple hundred, man. Just 200-300.
Guess see what I deal with.
Just throw that out, and I'll be cool after that.
Daily, weekly basis. We had a great time.
Oh man,
as Donnie T would say, we had a great time. Everything was good.
The best interview
great time.
ever.
Best interview I've ever done.
It was perfect. It was a
good Lord.
Perfect interview.
That guy. We won't even get into that. Anyways, man, well, I appreciate you coming on. Happy birthday again. Appreciate you.
It was a great interview, man. It was pretty cathartic. So I went through all this stuff, making me walk down all these bad memories. I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. No problem. That's what we do.
But you know, I got a couple other questions. Like when I come down here,
oh boy,
I think I should have like a car to come pick me up, like a limo or something. I had to drive down here, bro. That's costing me gas money. And then, you know, then you come down and talking about, let's get a meal. I want some cash, bro. I need to get paid for this. I asked for M&Ms, all brown M&Ms. I ain't get that. There ain't no green room. There ain't no snacks. And when I do a podcast, we got snacks for the people. We got all kinds of stuff.
Look, man, we're just getting started, man. I think the high noon is kicking in.
You need to upgrade the show, man, because people need something to eat. They need a green room. They need all this. And then you send me questions before the show. You know me. What kind of questions you want me to answer before the show?
Anyways, man, thank y'all for tuning in. Politely Dangerous Podcast.
Hey, man, watch the show, man. But if you really want to see a good show, tune in to the Tuck and Tuck Podcast. That's Tuck, the letter N, Tuck. We on all platforms. Instagram, Facebook,
We'll shout you
YouTube, all that. I got it. You know, this is a good podcast.
Great.
But if you really want to see, it's okay. I mean, in comparison to mine, I'm on like season 2. Like I done did like 27 episodes.
Oh my gosh.
So if you want to see a good one, there's comedy, there's seriousness, there's interesting stories, historical stuff. It's always good. And just tune in and watch. We need a lot of subscribers because we need to make some money off that podcast because this dude is not paying for these interviews. I mean, if I was on Vlad paid money.
All right, man. Appreciate y'all. Stay tuned in.
Man, I can't get nothing.
Episode number 2. Stay polite. Stay dangerous.
Peace.